Council meeting of August 3rd, 2021 is called to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and maybe Deidre Peterson can do this.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Donna, will you do a roll call, please?
I will. Councilmember Feast. Present. Mayor Dorsey.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Peterson.
Here.
Councilmember Schmidt.
Here.
Councilmember Bode.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell.
Present.
And Councilmember Inesco.
Here.
Okay, thank you very much. Does council have any late changes to the agenda? How about, does council members have any board reports to make? Not there either. All right. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as published. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to presentations. Our first presentation this evening is by Liz Arbaugh. She is here to present the second quarter LTAC report for the Mason County Historical Society Museum. And she will be right with us. Come on in, Liz.
Hi.
We're ready when you are.
Okay, I just have to kind of take this in a little bit. It looks very different than it did a year ago, or
Yeah.
2 years ago, I guess now. I am Liz Arbaugh. I'm the Executive Director at the Mason County Historical Museum. And before I start talking about our second quarter, I just wanted to give you a quick rundown of our response to the pandemic and the required closures that we were forced into. Like much of the rest of the state, we closed the second week of March 2020, and we were required to close several times during the last year and a half. Because of financial uncertainty, I furloughed one employee, and I cut back my own hours and the hours of our curator, Jan Parker. We also discontinued our volunteer program because, with the exception of myself, all staff and volunteers fell into the high-risk category. We canceled the downtown car show for both 2020 and then more recently 2021, which has meant a loss of roughly $15,000 a year, or just under 20% of our total annual budget. During the time when the museum was closed, we were still supporting our mission of preserving and sharing the history of Mason County. Book sales on our website were brisk, and we experienced a sharp uptick of research questions from people stuck at home. We still produced our monthly newsletter for our 400 members, and Jan Parker continued to write her bi-monthly articles for the Shelton Mason County Journal, History at a Glance, which is provided as a courtesy by the museum to the newspaper to encourage an interest in Mason County history. We've successfully applied for grants that support culture and the humanities to help with our loss of income from the car show, and also the decrease in our lodging tax funds. With these grants and cuts to our expenses, we've managed to stay in the black, although it has meant that some of our objectives for the museum have been delayed or put on hold. As you can see from our attendance numbers, while they are lower than they've been in the past, especially during the summer, we are seeing a return of visitors from around the country, with a couple from outside the country, which I'm still not clear about how they did that, but with the closed borders, but anyway, and about a third from greater than 50 miles. And we are seeing more visitors now as the summer continues. So we have a new rack card featuring the art of Waldo Chase, who is a Mason County artist, and this print was produced in 1927, I believe, 29, something like that. And it's part of our collection. And we continue to build a really nice art collection. In June, we received 17 paintings from a relative of the Dalby family in Union, and it includes some really nice pieces by Ethel Dalby, her son Fritz Dalby, and we also were lucky enough to get another beautiful Waldo Chase block print. In honor of Forest Festival, we've had an exhibit featuring artifacts from The Ring of Fire, the 1961 movie filmed in part in Mason County, including a train falling into the Wainuchi from a very high burning trestle. And that will be packed up shortly for our exhibit featuring the life and art of Ori Nobles. We have some amazing artifacts that have been donated by his family, most of which have never been displayed. He was featured prominently in an exhibit in 2019 called The Lavender Palette at the Cascadia Art Museum in Edmonds. And they borrowed several pieces from our museum for that exhibit. And so we will be promoting that show to the greater Seattle area to encourage visits from people that learned about him through that show. Our website and Facebook page continue to be popular. We've had a 10% increase in website visits, and we have used Facebook successfully to share content and then also to encourage membership and donations. So the Historical Society truly appreciates the continued support of the City of Shelton.
All right.
Any questions?
Any questions for Liz?
Good to see you.
Yeah.
I don't have a question, but
Yeah.
I don't know how many people of us have been in the museum. I hope all of us have been there.
Oh, yeah.
But
Absolutely.
it is an amazing place to go in.
Yeah, it really, there's so much there, and what you see is just, just a tiny bit of what we have. Most of the fun stuff is in the back, so, but you get to ask us, and we will be happy to share whatever we have, so.
My kids used to laugh at me because my yearbook is in the library, or in the museum.
Yeah.
So they would say, my mom is in the museum. Yeah.
I would just also add that we have a wonderful mural on the side of the pine tree. I know that the pine tree is owned by a private person, but that mural was painted by Bob Chamberlain, who's a
Mhm.
longtime artist and lifetime resident of Mason County. And he's good. He's very elderly now, and he's still painting. But it might be a good thing for us to maybe, and I'd be happy to reach out to him. He's a very dear family friend, and it might be good for us to maybe capture some of his art before he passes.
We do have some of his art,
Yeah.
and he also just probably 2 weeks ago brought in a concept drawing for another mural.
Oh, good.
So
yes,
we just
good.
have to find some
Okay,
place to
good.
put it.
Okay, good. I've been kind of bugging.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Liz. All right, we'll move on to general public comment, where members of the public have 3-minute time limit.
Mr. Mayor, we have another presentation on the water comp plan, I believe.
Oh, yes, we do. Mr. Ken Gill, along with 2 guests from Corolla Engineers, are going to provide us with an update on our water system comprehensive plan.
You said your packet wasn't opening? Because I'm having a hard time too.
Yeah, I couldn't even get it on here.
Yeah, I can't either.
It won't open.
I'm just using
Yeah, no big deal.
little papers.
It's just a big one, I think.
Yeah.
It's a heavy file. It's like a 200
pages.
Yeah, it's like a 200 meg file or something.
Okay,
No, yeah, it took me a few minutes to download it.
okay.
All right, hi, Ken.
Good evening, council. It's good to see you tonight. And we ordered up this rain shower for you just to talk about the water comp plan tonight. So it was right, very timely. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to Laura Kamrick and Natalie Riley. Both are professional engineers with the firm Corello, and they've been working hard on your water comp plan for the last 5 years. So this tonight is kind of a conclusion of all their efforts, And I'm going to turn it over to him, to both of these talented young ladies, and let them go. So thank you for your attention and participation.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi.
Hi. Hi, I'm Laura Kamrick. I am the project manager for this project from Corollo, and really excited to be here today. This is my partner, or friend, engineer that worked on the plan. This is Natalie Riley. Natalie did most of the system analysis and hydraulic modeling, and she'll be giving kind of the meat of the presentation today because she really knows those details for us. So if you guys are ready, we're going to get started. Okay, so we have an agenda, and our agenda really is just going to give you an overview of the water system planning process, and then we're going to go through all 10 of these chapters. We're just going to do them really lightly just so you can get a real understanding of what is in this plan for you, and then we're going to end by talking about next steps. So we wanted to thank city staff that have really contributed and helped. We summarized all this information together. You guys know it's quite a large PDF, the plan, but really want to thank the staff and the city team members that provided this information that we were able to put together. So your last plan was done in 2010, really summarized what your system is, and what we wanted to do is bring this forward. And it took a little bit longer than anticipated. COVID probably added a little bit to the process, but now you have a new plan that's going to give you a roadmap for the next 20 years. So this plan does follow the WAC requirements. Washington State has very specific requirements, what it wants to see in a water system plan. So it defines what your water service area needs to be, what your existing system is, sort of that performance criteria that you're planning to use for your system for all your existing and future customers. We looked at what the future demands need to be to serve this whole area. That's how much water we anticipate for average and max day. We ran it through the hydraulic model and came up with some deficiencies, came up with some recommended improvements, and we'll be summarizing those improvements in a capital improvement plan and talk a little bit about financing and implementation. All right, so I want to get started telling you about the first chapter. The first chapter is pretty simple, summarizes the purpose, the plan objectives, talks about the areas that you own, also summarizes the approval process. So we're right now at the agency draft plan process. So we'll be getting comments back. Those will be tucked in the appendix, and then we'll have the final plan ready for you. And this chapter also includes that Department of Health Washington State checklist that shows that everything has been done according to those regulations. And now Natalie's going to jump in and talk about water requirements. This tells you about how much water you've developed or you've produced and what you're going to need in the future.
So yeah, the city's water system is supplied by 3 different wells. Well 1, wells, and then there's wells 3 and 4. So this graph shows, now I see it's kind of small font for you, but the graph shows the average annual water production. So along the x-axis is the years in the last decade from 2009 to 2020, and on the right axis is the production in million gallons per day. And so this just shows that, over the last decade, the water use in the city has been pretty steady at around 1 million gallons per day. So this is a little more detail about the historical average water production. So the blue columns are the average production, which we just saw in the previous graph. And then the red columns are the maximum day demand, which represents the highest production in one day in a given year. And so that's more at the 2 to 2.5 million gallons per day range. And then that green line that you see towards the top is the peaking factor, which is the ratio of the maximum day demand to average day demand, and that's used to help us with our water demand projections. So zoning, demographic projections, and historical trends are used to project the future water consumption. So we use the demographic growth rates from the city's comprehensive plan to develop growth rates for the projected increase in water customers within the city's water system. So the projected water demands are the foundational building blocks for the plan. It helps inform how much water the city may need in the future. So this graph on the left, to the left of the dotted lines are the historical average day demand and maximum day demand. Those are the same as the previous graphs we just saw. And then the lines to the right of the dotted line show the the projected average data demand, that blue line that's on the bottom half, and then the projected maximum data demand. So these kind of show the range of what we think the projected demands in the future will be for the city.
Can I ask a question? What
Yep.
year does that project out to?
Oh, sorry, yes, it goes out to 2041.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry. And so we created 3 different scenarios that encompass the likely range of future water needs. So there's a low scenario that kind of takes into account water use efficiency and conservation and has a lower peaking factor. And then there's a medium scenario which we think best predicts what the city's future demands will be. And this is the demand projections that we use for the system analysis. And then the high scenario is the highest demand we think that the city is likely to see in the future, and that kind of takes into account a slightly higher peaking factor and no water use conservation. So those are just the range of demand projections that we developed. Okay, so chapter 3 summarizes your existing water system. So the future water service area for the city mostly follows the Shelton urban growth area, which the water system, the future service area is the brown dashed line. You can see in the southwest there's the addition of the urban growth area annex, but then the rest of it follows urban growth area for the city. The water system is divided into 5 pressure zones to serve water to customers at the appropriate pressure. So in the south, we have the Ingleside zone that's shown in pink. And then just north of that is the high school zone in brown. And then the Capitol Hill zone off to the east in yellow. Then there's a Mountain View zone, which is that orange kind of spreading throughout the middle and the east side, and then the Upper Mountain View, which is off to the west and also includes the other some high elevations in the city service area. So this figure shows the facilities that serve the city, which include the 3 groundwater wells that previously mentioned. There's 5 storage reservoirs. There's 1 for each pressure zone. There's 4 booster pump stations and over 66 miles of pipe. There's also 1 emergency source, which is Shelton Springs. And there's some photos of, in the top middle is the Upper Mountain View reservoir, and then on the right is the Mountain View reservoir, picture of the well, and then one of the pump stations there. And so we developed a hydraulic profile to show how the system functions together. It's kind of a way of seeing how the system is all interconnected. You can see the pressure zones here, those larger rectangles, and then the 5 reservoirs that serve each of the pressure zones. The 4 pump stations are there, the 3 wells are there, and then valves connecting between the different pressure zones. There's just a different way of visualizing the system to see how it all works together. The chapter also includes a summary of the planning considerations that were used to develop the plan. It includes the water service and service extensions policies, including the duty to serve. Also includes system criteria, which we used for the system analysis. Also summarizes the agency coordination and financial requirements for the city. So chapter 4 presents the water conservation plan and the water use efficiency program. DOH requires that all Class A municipal water systems develop a water use efficiency program to plan for conservation. The program should include the key parts that are listed there: collecting data, forecasting demands, evaluating water use efficiency measures, also calculating distribution system leakage, and implementing a water use efficiency program to meet goals. And so the city has adopted 3 water use efficiency goals. Those goals are to reduce total consumption, maintain low distribution system leakage, and to reduce residential water consumption. The water use efficiency rule also requires that utilities with distribution system leakage greater than 10% develop a water loss control action plan. The city has a water loss control action plan. And that includes 2 main activities, which are to conduct a water audit and perform an annual leak detection surveys and repair leaks. And so that makes up the city's water loss control action plan. And so the water use efficiency program represents the lowest demand scenario that we previously mentioned. So that takes into consideration decreases in water demand per customer and a lower peaking factor. And so just kind of tying that in with the demand projections we were just talking about. Okay, so Chapter 5 summarizes the system analysis. This is the bulk of the plan. We looked at the whole system and identified deficiencies and then recommend improvements based on those deficiencies. So we looked at the city's existing water system with future conditions under 2031 and 2041 water demand projections. And so we used the medium demand projection to evaluate the city's pumping and supply capacity, the storage facility capacities. We also used the hydraulic model to review the system pressures and velocities, and also looked at the fire flow capacity. So the first thing we did was we looked at the supply and pumping capacity. So we compared the capacity of the wells and the pump stations to the projected demands. One element we reviewed, which this figure shows, is the supply redundancy, which looks at the system with the largest source out of service. So we looked at the capacity of the system with well 1, which is your largest source out of service. And with that, we saw that there was a need for some supply redundancy. So we are recommending a new well to provide some redundancy to the system, and also a new Upper Mountain View booster pump station to provide redundancy to the Upper Mountain View pressure zone. So next we looked at storage capacity. So we compared the existing storage capacities to the storage requirements. There's more details about that in the plan, but this is kind of a summary of that. So you can see in the bottom of the table there is a deficit in the future for the storage capacities, and so we recommended a couple projects for meeting that deficit. The first one is based on when Shelton Hills gets developed, there'll need to be a new reservoir in the Upper Mountain View area, an elevated reservoir to serve that development. Also, 2 new storage reservoirs are recommended, one in the Mountain View pressure zone near well 1, and then another one in the Ingleside pressure zone to meet the storage deficit. Also recommend in the future taking the Capitol Hill Reservoir offline so that customers in that pressure zone can be served at a higher pressure. Just the elevations of the customers in that area and the height of the tank don't really match up, so in the future recommending taking that reservoir offline. So next thing we did was we used the updated and calibrated hydraulic model of the city's water distribution system and looked at pressures, velocities, and fire flow requirements. Wow. So this figure shows high pressures in the system. There's some in the Ingleside pressure zone and the high school pressure zone, but we don't have any recommendations made to address those high pressures because they're not excessive. They are most of them are between 80 and 110 pounds per square inch, but this figure just identifies those areas. The next thing we looked at was low system pressures. So the Department of Health sets minimum pressure requirements, and the model showed some areas with low system pressures. And so wherever there are low system pressures, we have recommended improvement projects so that the DOH minimum, which is 30 pounds per square inch PSI, are mitigated. They're shown as the red dots in the figure. You can kind of see them in the Ingleside and the Mountain View pressure zone. And then we also use the hydraulic model to look at velocities in the pipes. And so the hydraulic model showed that there's no maximum velocities above the 8 feet per second criteria, so we don't have any recommendations based on high velocities. The final thing we looked at using the hydraulic model is fire flow availability. So this figure shows fire flow requirements, which are based on the city's zoning map. Fire flow requirements range from 750 gallons per minute up to 2,000 gallons per minute, depending on land use. And so we use those requirements to see if there's enough available fire flow at each of the, within the model. And we developed recommendations where there was low residual pressure under fire flow conditions, which are noted by those red dots in the figure. So this is a figure that summarizes the improvements that are recommended to meet the deficiencies shown in the previous slides. As a result of the system analysis, we put together a list of recommended projects. Most of them are shown here, and these projects will help inform the development of the capital improvement program. Okay, so Chapter 6 describes the water quality requirements for the sources and distribution system. So as a Class A water system, the city must comply with the drinking water standards of the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act and Department of Health standards. The city's water quality is in compliance with all the regulations and for water quality and reporting requirements. City has a water quality plan, it treats its sources, the city follows state and federal requirements and monitors new and future water quality rules. And so the Consumer Confidence Report rule requires that community water systems provide annual reports to their customers with information about the quality of their drinking water supply. The city complies with this rule through its annual water quality and efficiency report, which is shown here. So those get released to consumers annually. Okay, the next section is Chapter 7, which is the water source protection. So the city's wellhead protection program, our plan was updated as part of the plan. Washington state regulations require the water systems to maintain a sanitary control area fact sheet for the drinking water sources to protect them from contamination, and also requires that cities develop and implement a source water protection program, which, since the city's sources are groundwater wells, means that the wellhead protection program is required. And so this wellhead protection program includes those items listed there. I won't read them out, but those are requirements that are included. And then one thing that is required is capture zones for the aquifers. So these figures show, so the wells draw from 3 different aquifers within the area, and these figures show the 6-month, 1-year, 5-year, and 10-year capture zones for each aquifer. And so those are included in the wellhead protection plan. The next chapter is operations and maintenance, which summarizes the operation and maintenance of the city's water distribution system. So that chapter includes a public works organizational chart that was recently updated. So it just shows how the water system department and public works interact and who is involved and what their responsibilities are. So the chapter in the plan summarizes all of the operations and maintenance efforts, which are a lot to keep the system running and maintained. Includes who manages it and the personnel that are involved, what operator training is required, and who's certified to run the system. It also summarizes procedures and maintenance for different equipment and systems. Also has things like the emergency response program, the cross-connection control program, customer complaint response program. These are all important programs that are included in this chapter and in the appendices, which is, again, why sometimes the reports get along with those appendices, but those are all included there. It also keeps track of safety procedures and record keeping and reporting. So all that good stuff is documented in the O&M chapter of the water system plan. Okay, so chapter 9 is the capital improvement program. So this chapter summarizes the recommended capital improvement program. So the CIP helps the city prioritize and execute projects. So this figure shows, it's another summary of all the projects that have specific locations that are recommended from the system analysis and other chapters within the plan. So, yeah, it's hard to see up there, but it shows all the projects that we would recommend by what type of infrastructure is involved. So the CIP projects are identified by the type of infrastructure. We have general projects, supply, which are related to wells, pressure zones, storage, pump station, and distribution system projects, which are pipeline projects. So it helps to identify the projects based on what type of infrastructure is involved. So you'll see that in the plan that they're identified by these categories. We also allocate the capital projects into 3 types. The first one is growth, where we look at projects that provide additional system capacity to meet future demands. And these are typically funded by connection fees and developers. And we have those separated from the repair and replacement projects, which are repairing or maintaining existing infrastructure. And those are funded mostly by rates. And then those are also differentiated from level of service projects. So those increase the level of service for the city's system, including things like redundant pumping, backup power, fire flow availability, and those are typically funded by rates. So the CIP includes a summary of the project costs and the recommended year for implementation. The expanded table is on page 9-5 in the plan. Don't expect you to read this from the slide, but it summarizes all the recommended projects from the water system plan and what year we recommend, what percentage of each project type they are, and what the total cost would be. And so looking at the CIP by project type and whether we allocated them to the short-term or long-term can help guide funding decisions. So this table summarizes the CIP costs by project type and whether it's a short-term or long-term project. So it has a total cost and also an annual cost based on the number of years in each term. And then we also look at the CIP by infrastructure that shows where funding could be allocated. The CIP costs are kind of split by the categories, with the storage and pump station projects making up the largest portion. And now I'm going to hand it to Laura.
Thanks, Natalie. Okay, you guys did a great job listening to those. Going through that with really long chapters, but we felt it was really important to give you this, this foundation. Department of Health does require a financial plan. This is a really brief chapter that summarizes the financial status of your water utility and how you would fund the CIP that we just showed on the previous slide. So it summarizes your historical past performance, like what are your rates, what are your charges, do you have any outstanding debt for the water system? It talks about any financial policies you have, what the forecast would look like moving forward if you were going to implement these projects, and does a summary and recommendations. It's, as I mentioned, a high overview, just so that Department of Health can say, yeah, this is a viable utility. So we wanted to show you, this shows each of the individual years, and you can see what your operations are in red, and then those capital projects. And then it allows you to see that if you are able to do small cost of living increases in your rates and just do small changes, you'll be able to keep up with the recommended CIP and not have any really significant problems in financing these recommended improvements. But what I do want to tell you about this financial plan is that it does include the $2 million for the rehabilitation well that's necessary, and it shows the state funds and revenue. So this is really great for your water utility to have this available. But one thing I do want to say is that showing this plan for what it looks like for the next 10 years and 20 years is not a substitute for doing a true rate study for what those individual customers would use for water, and what we would call a general facility charge study, which says what would we need for growth in these special areas, especially in a growing community like yourselves, where you have these pocket communities that might have to look at what the charges are for connecting to your system and having that water. So I just wanted to remind you that these are really important, and we did include both of these in our CIP and recommendations in our plan for you. So we have a draft agency review plan. You've taken a look at it. It's ready to go forward to the surrounding communities, the county, and Department of Health. We will get comments back from all of them. It usually takes somewhere between 30 and 90 days. We'll review all the comments. We'll work with city staff and the city team to put all the comment responses together. We'll incorporate them, and then we'll bring back to you a final plan for approval. So I really appreciate your guys' time and attention, and hopefully that was a great overview, A, of your system and what the next 10 and 20 years will look like.
All right. Thank you very much. Any questions for them right now? Joe?
Yeah. So, yeah, very, very thorough presentation. Thank you for that. Did have a couple of questions, and I'm not sure if this is maybe a Ken or Jeff question kind of thing, so bear with me here. We're using the term equivalent residential unit, and then on the stormwater side, we're using equivalent service unit. Is there a reason for the difference? And if so, can you kind of explain what?
Those two terms, as we use them, are used interchangeably. I think now that I think about it, we probably ought to use the same terms for all plans, just for clarity's sake. But I think that's something easy to correct.
Yeah, no problem. I just was wanting to make sure that I was thinking the right thing, because I hear residential, and that eliminates commercial industrial from that.
Yeah, that's true. And the term that we're using is defined by Department of Health and Department of Ecology. So they want us to calculate a block of water as an ERU, an equivalent, what a residential unit would use in the city, which commonly is a single-family residence. And then your commercial and your non-residential would have multiple blocks of that. So a commercial unit might be 5 ERUs worth of water.
Right. And just a follow-up, if you don't mind. Related to that, I noticed on your chart it had the last 20 years and then 20 years out. Last 20 years have been fairly flat, and 20 years out essentially doubles. Can you talk a little bit about how that was sort of calculated? Because when I looked through this as well, and to the capital improvement side, what you guys provided, 63% of the capital improvement dollars are for level of service projects, 19% for repair and replacement, and only 18% is for growth. So I was just kind of curious the correlation between the growth pattern and what you provided.
Yeah, we're required to make sure that we're matching through the Growth Management Act what the planning department is using for your future land use and zoning.
Okay.
And the city decided that it wanted, this is what the rates of growth would look like for your entire service area for the 20 years. So we wanted those two planning numbers to be consistent.
Okay.
So I think that this would provide a conservative overview, like if you were to grow at this is how much water you would need. And as you can see that most of your capital improvement projects are not driven by this growth.
Right.
There's a level of service to all your customers and that repair and replacement program.
I think that's a very important point, so
Yep.
thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
And just to add to that, if I might, we've talked several times across several different utilities and programs in the city about how the comprehensive plan was structured and how the growth rate was structured, basically relatively flat until, 7-8 years out, and then straight up. So that informs a lot of the analysis, this analysis and many of the others that you've seen.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
And that demand projection, that's based on if we were to annex the entire urban growth area?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you chose at the city, or your city is recommending that your entire service area matches your urban growth area,
Understood.
so that everyone there would be served by the city. And in a timely and reasonable manner in the next 20 years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just had 2 quick ones. The first one, I might have missed it. Who set the goals? There were some goals up there?
Which,
like the water goals?
Oh, the water use efficiency?
Oh, yeah, I believe the water use efficiency goals were prior goals,
Okay.
and that they were reviewed by the city team.
And then you mentioned about our emergency reserve. Where is that specifically?
Oh,
For water?
Oh, yeah. You were
Oh,
talking
the
about-
emergency source,
Yeah.
Shelton Springs.
Okay, and where specifically on Shelton Springs?
it's
I don't know the
right there at K and 13th.
Yeah, it's right where the intersection is. You can see kind of a little building.
Okay.
So it uses a backup source of supply for
Okay,
the city.
fantastic, thank you.
Yeah. I'm like, it's right here.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm sure that was helpful. Did we miss anything in those questions? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Laura, was it? And
Yeah, Laura.
Natalie?
Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
You too, Ken. All right, we're going to move on to our general public comment, where members of the public have 3 minutes to provide comment on any topic at this time. And for those at home, the meeting can be viewed on Mason Web. You can get a hold of Jeff Knighton at his email, jeff.knighton@sheltonwa.gov, or you can call him on the telephone, 360-968-9004. So I think Donna is checking for public comment right now.
Surprised nobody wanted to know what happened to well 2.
Like PUD too.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
our first public comment is from Mike Fox.
Mr. Mike Fox. All right, Mike, we're ready when you are.
Okay, I think everybody knows me. My name is Mike Fox, and I live at Island Lake. I own numerous properties and businesses within Mason County and the city of Shelton. Our family's been in this community for approaching 100 years, and I've been active in Shelton and Mason County for most of my life. I'm here tonight representing myself and a group called Save the Watershed, which was created last year when a poorly proposed development sales agreement created by city staff came to light and was presented to you, the city council. The attempt to sell off and develop the city property with up to 400 low-income manufactured homes with little or no public notice on what is known by most people as the city watershed created a rather large outcry from which our group was formed to be involved in any future proposals for the watershed and to be involved in planning for the future growth of the city of Shelton. We're a group made up of residents residing within the city, within the urban growth boundary, and surrounding the city of Shelton. We all have a stake in the direction of the city of Shelton. During our involvement with the prior process, we were greatly appreciative of the city council and their willingness to listen and take to heart the concerns of many residents that you heard from that spoke and conveyed their concerns to you in person and during your council meetings, which were done on the Zoom system. As part of the process of wanting to have a much more community-involved basis in any future development or proposals for the city watershed and the city of Shelton at large, our members have become involved in communicating with you, the city council, with city staff. We're involved with the city staff in looking to improve and streamline the city codes to remove barriers to new housing within the city, and we're working on getting community members involved in these processes. We currently have approximately 350 members who have joined our Facebook page. A large number of those have also attended numerous meetings that we have had, and many have donated funds to our group for the work that we're trying to accomplish since we've been formed. Part of that work was a survey to attempt to get a feeling for the residents of the city of Shelton and the surrounding areas and their feelings about the present and the future development of the city of Shelton, the watershed, and housing within the city and the urban growth boundary. This spring, we sent out a survey to all the mailing addresses within the city of Shelton and posted the survey on all the available Facebook pages that are related to Shelton and the various groups within and around Shelton. We received responses from 274 households, 154 backed by mail, which would be the citizens within the city of Shelton, and the other 120 responses were from the online survey. I provided each of the council members with a copy of that, and she also has copies, additional copies if any of the city staff members would like that. Survey included 9 questions related to the respondents' general feelings about the city of Shelton, why they live here, the quality of life. I got about 30 seconds left. What type of housing they would like to see developed in the city, how the housing type should be dispersed, and where the growth should be, city regulations, support for the real estate levy to support affordable housing and the best use of the city watershed. We hope that the city council will take that survey and use it in any process that may be contemplated for any proposal for the watershed. We're here as a resource to the city staff and to the city council, and we appreciate you allowing us to be involved. Thank you.
All right, Mike. Try to hold it down to 3 minutes next time, okay?
I practiced for half an hour. I had 2 minutes and 58 seconds.
Mr. Mayor, just a quick question for the council. Has anybody received an invite for their community meetings?
I haven't.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
You guys want one?
Yes,
I
please.
have, I've had 2 or 3 people ask to have a meeting with me, and they've never followed up on it.
Understood.
Same?
Well, I still want to know why that group doesn't have anybody running for city council.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Mayor.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
Our next public comment is from Steve Whitehouse.
Steve Whitehouse. Okay, Steve, we're ready when you are.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm here as a follow-up to what Mike was saying. We, of course, have given some feedback with regard to the consideration of using a former watershed for development. And I think a number of issues have been developed, actually one of which, concerns, some of which you've seen tonight about the Shelton Springs Reserve area. But also the comprehensive plan requires the city to maintain open space. We know this is an aquifer recharge area. There's a wetland that goes through the middle of it. It's in a 100-year floodplain, and it's an airport restriction zone. We also found out in this process that the Squaxin Island tribe had no idea what was going on, and I suspect they might have an opinion too. What I would rather do, and what I think other people would rather do, is look for solutions. I'm not an expert on affordable housing, but I've identified a few things to pass along. The city owns 144 parcels of real estate, some of which we know you can't develop because they're on hillsides. But there are others, some even surrounding this building. There's a statute, RCW 8452-105, which, after a public vote, the city can assess 50% per thousand, and the county can do the same thing. If you look at the current assessed values, that would raise over $4 million for affordable housing. The city would have to develop a plan. The county would also obviously be helpful for them to be engaged because they have 90% of the assessed value in Mason County. It's as a result of the Cranston-Gonzalez National Affordable Housing Act, which I don't know the answer, but I believe there are some things in the legislation that suggest that there's federal funding available as well. There's also the Housing Trust Fund, operated by the Washington State Department of Commerce. So if this group is really interested in creating affordable housing, not just workforce housing, but for some of the other housing issues that this community faces that I think we're all aware of, I would be willing to help work towards a solution. And I think there are other people who'd be willing to too, as long as that solution does not involve the former watershed. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, Donna, we have more?
Yes, we do.
All right.
I'll be right back.
After these minutes.
Jeff, Mary's gonna have to start creating little commercials for these breaks. Download your My Civic app now.
That might not be a bad idea.
Well, Yurako needs to start branding these cups because they'd have them on the screen every week.
Mr. Mayor, we have Dale Elmland.
Hey, Dale. You have 3 minutes, and we're, we're ready when you
My name is Dale
are.
Elmland. I have lived here in the community for 61 years. Community, third generation here in Mason County. My topic today is traffic. We're going to have a study session coming up on the 14th. I'll be sitting in on that. K Street and Old Olympic Highway North, the traffic lights we have facing south, you have a turn lane to turn towards Mountain View School, a southbound lane, and traffic revision used to be a second lane heading south. No longer do we have that second lane. We now have parking stalls. We have that third traffic light, which sits over top of the parking stalls. We pay maintenance on the third light, and we now have a liability issue in inclement weather. People not from the community, they're going to see that second or third light sitting over that parking stalls, and there could be an issue with an accident and liability falling back onto the city and the people of Shelton. No need to pay for the maintenance on that third light. We need to remove it, take the liability off the city. Next topic is our sitting on top of our Wallace Nealand Boulevard and Springs Road contractors' bids for our roundabout. Our studies have been made. It's been approved. We need to move forward. People have been waiting for that to be done. The high school's been waiting. We've had accidents with the kids at the high school. We don't want to make sure that our students are safe, our faculty is safe, and our community is safe. It's a high traffic volume accident issue, and we can remove the lights, saving us funds for maintenance. Those funds that go away, all right? And I want to thank Ms. McDowell and other members that recommended the impervious sidewalks to come up in the future. That's a wonderful idea. And I'll be coming back to visit you all for other topics. Knowledge is age, age is knowledge. And I want to be one of those that said, from 40 years ago, I told you so. So thank you so very much. Godspeed and bless all of your health. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have to start switching hands with these things when the skin's gonna come off.
I almost didn't recognize Dale without his beard.
I knew a Chris Elman when I was in high school. I wonder if it's his older
Brother.
brother.
Yes.
Older brother,
Related.
yeah.
Did both of us three. Linda Elman. Linda Elman, sister.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we have Jessica Roberson.
All right, Jessica, hi.
Hi, Jessica,
We're ready when you are.
lifelong resident of Shelton, 44 years. I live at 205 West Birch. I am here to share concerns about the proposal for the 400 homes to be built on the watershed. I do not disagree that Shelton needs more affordable housing. I just don't think that's a great spot. Obviously, the potential for negative impacts on the environment, which, if those come to manifest, it's then too late to do anything about. Also, the potential for increased traffic near Mountain View Elementary, Olympic Middle School, Oakland Bay Junior High, and Shelton High School. Increased traffic around schools and kids kids crossing the street and riding their bikes to school and walking. I don't think that's, a good situation. Also, I have used the Huff and Puff Trail consistently for about 30 years. As an adult, I use it almost daily. I'm a runner. And running and nature, I rely on for my mental health. And the more that I've seen homes and development encroach upon that space, the more I see trash, I've seen sleeping bags, I've seen tents, I've seen unsavory characters just kind of loitering around there, and I feel less safe. The least safe I've ever felt on that trail. And also, when you log around that space, the existing trees become more vulnerable during storms. And that also, I feel, is a liability to the city, since that's a city trail. The sign on the Huff and Puff says, enjoy the serenity of nature, but it's hard when more and more nature is taken away from that space. I feel like with this type of project, the people who profit are not the same people who will suffer the consequences. That's all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right. All right, that was it?
That was it, but I suppose we should do our 30-second delay. if
Okay.
Someone wants to comment.
We'll pause for 30 seconds.
There's no one else. I'll go double check.
Just making an.
We've moved on from that project though, right? Am I mistaken?
No,
Like, I mean, the 400,
that project.
The first one?
That project is defunct. It's.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm just sorry, I'm just a little confused because I keep hearing like it's still happening and we're,
Yeah. Huh?
okay.
That project.
Yeah,
is, but
okay. Just making
Yeah.
sure I was,
Doesn't mean there won't be other proposals, but
yeah, that one's gone.
And, I think it's really important that we did, and we're starting into this conversation about our water quality systems and, the new plan, 2041. And it's really clear our assets and where they're located. And James, asked, Councilmember Bode asked the clarifying question around, where those assets are. So I think that the more that we can promote the plan, the more that we can educate, as we always, are committed to around where those assets lie. I think that'll continue to debunk the myths around the watershed and where our emergency supply actually derives from and how we pull it out. I love this study, by the way. This is great information. There's a lot of information here, y'all, that actually is supportive of housing needs for our area.
But as a point of order, we shouldn't be discussing on the public comment that was just had. That's something that we can discuss at a future study session, because I think there's a lot of material that we all need to cover together, and I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say on the topic.
Yep. Point we'll take. All right, let's move on. We are recessing from our regular meeting to open a public hearing. City Manager Jeff Knighton is here to share information about a franchise agreement with PUD.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council. Tonight, I bring to you the last in a long series of franchise agreements with various providers within the city limits. We have come to an agreement with our partners at PUD3, and a couple of highlights of the agreement that's attached. We've been working toward the agreement for approximately 2 years now. And this does not replace an existing franchise agreement. It does replace a blanket right-of-way permit that was issued in 2017. So we're getting to the spot now where they're in the documents are in the form that they need to be. The city has worked to ensure that the provisions contained in the new agreement provide adequate protection for both PUD3 and for the city and its residents. And this agreement grants the non-exclusive franchise to PUD3 for a period of 10 years. A couple of points in the document. Let's see, just mention that one. There is a provision in the document to provide for joint trenching and boring. So if someone has a project, then everybody can work together to get that done, so we're not tearing up the roads twice or 3 times or 4 times. And it is economies of scale that makes it much more cost effective for all of our ratepayers and all of our citizens. when we work together that way. And we do have, at this point, permits required for some construction projects. Under the right-of-way permit that was granted, there were no permits that were required. So now we have an opportunity to review what PUD is proposing. Don't want to add another layer of bureaucracy in there, but it's important that we know and have documentation about what's in our right-of-way. Nobody wants to cut through a line that we didn't know was there or was there that was mislocated. That doesn't help anybody. Another piece is that the agreement contemplates undergrounding of utilities. It doesn't require it, but it does contemplate it particularly for newer areas. But there's a sharing agreement as part written into this, where if it's our requirement, then we're going to pay for at least a portion of it. If it's something that's part of a development agreement, we'll pay for the difference, or not a development agreement, an agreement with PUD. We'll pay the difference between what it would cost them to put it overhead versus what it costs to go in the ground. We also add conduit, PUD 3, when they have a construction project, allow us to lay open conduit. So if a service comes along that none of us have heard of yet, there's already a method to get it into the right-of-way rather than having to design a whole new system. I think it's a good agreement. We worked well with PUD and with Justin Holtzgrove, who is here tonight, if council has any questions for him. But I would pass that along to council, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right. Anyone have a question for Jeff? Doesn't look like it. All right. All right, we'll pause 30 seconds. Has anyone signed up? No. So we'll pause for 30 seconds.
Okay, that's 30 seconds, Mr. Mayor.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I forgot to mention one piece. The PUD board is scheduled to consider this at their September 14th meeting, just FYI.
All right. All right, no public testimony, so Donna, would you give us a first reading of ordinance number 1963-1220?
Ordinance number 1963-1220, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, granting non-exclusive franchise for the transmission, distribution, and sale of electricity.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move to forward ordinance number 1963-1220 to the action agenda for the council meeting on August 17th, 2021 for further consideration.
Second.
All right, thank you. I'd like to invite council members to ask questions or make comments at this time. Seeing none. We have a motion and a second to forward ordinance number 1963-1220 to the action agenda for the council meeting on August 17th, 2021 for further consideration. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. This public hearing is closed and we'll resume our regular meeting. Move on to our action agenda. Now on the action agenda, your Finance Director, Aaron B. Miller, is going to share information about sewer averaging for summer consumption.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Deputy Mayor, council members. Aaron B. Miller with the city's finance department. Excuse me. This ordinance was discussed at the July 20th meeting on the business agenda. There has been no changes. Essentially what it will do is it will temporarily suspend Shelton Municipal Code 1428.020C and 1428.040C for the, which includes the, using the months of November through March to average for the coming summer months of June through October, due to some read challenges. So again, this will delete November from that calculation in order to be fair to all of our ratepayers. And there will not need to be any additional work on this ordinance, as it will become null and void November 1st of this year. And happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Let's pause for 30 seconds for public comments.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, that's 30 seconds.
All right, thank you. Can you give us a second reading of ordinance number 1972-0621?
Ordinance number 1972-0621, an ordinance of the City of Shelton, Washington, temporarily adjusting sewer averaging for summer consumption charge for calendar year 2021.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'd like to invite each of the council members to ask questions or make comments for Aaron B. Miller.
I just have are we still working on Joe's question about adding May to,
That's for 22, correct?
for 22?
Yes, thank you. I was meant to mention that. Yeah, we're still looking at that, and we'll be bringing that back at a later time. But yes, we are still looking at that.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 19.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor, we don't have a motion yet, but I'll take care of that.
Oh, we didn't have a motion yet.
I move that we approve ordinance number 1972-0621 as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 1972-0621 as presented. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Aaron. All right. Mhm. Distracted me. All right.
Those guys have to put their hands on that.
We'll try to.
Take the podium away.
I'm here.
All right, Jay, Public Works Director, Public Works Director Jay Harris has details for us about an EM&R roller surplus. Hey,
Good
Jay.
evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, Jay Harris, your Public Works Director. So we have purchased two new rollers to replace the 1995 Bomeg roller. And it has a lot of hours on it, and it's worn out for the most part. So I just need your authorization to surplus that roller. And I spoke to you last council meeting about it, and there's been no changes to the resolution.
All right. Let's ask for, well, we got to have a 30-second pause.
I am gonna buy that Jeopardy's. Bring on my phone, I'll pay for it.
We need the Jeopardy ringtone.
How about the Dawn singing for it? That's what she said.
Me sing it, I don't think I ever said sing. I could hum it, maybe tap dance.
Somebody probably owns the copyright to that song,
Yeah.
right?
It's like,
You can buy the song.
it's like Happy Birthday.
Yeah, like Happy Birthday, it's copyrighted.
All right, thank you. Now, would you please give us a reading of resolution number 1203-0621?
Resolution number 1203-0621, a resolution of the City of Shelton, Washington, declaring city property surplus to the needs of the city and disposing of such property for the common benefit.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number 1203-0621, a resolution declaring a 1995 Bomag double drum roller surplus and authorizing its disposal in a manner provided by law.
Second.
That's a good, yeah.
All right, any
Thank you.
council members have any questions or comments for Jay?
Get rid of it.
All right. We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 1203-0621, a resolution declaring a 1995 BOMAG double drum roller surplus and authorizing its disposal in a manner provided by law. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right. So, we'll move on to administrative reports. Jeff, will you give us your city manager report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council. At about noon today, I had, I think, 2 things to mention to you, and my list has grown substantially. So, first, we received, the mayor today received a letter from the Department of Ecology that the city has received the 2020 Wastewater Treatment Plant Outstanding Performance Award for an additional year. Wanted to highlight that, and we will make sure, Jay already has a copy, but we'll make sure Brent and all of the folks that work so hard down at the wastewater treatment plant understand what that means for us, and that we are extremely appreciative of their efforts, particularly in January when it's raining 14 inches in a month.
So pizza party for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So next item on my list, I was able to meet with our new Shelton School Superintendent, and we had a great conversation about partnering with the school district and with the city and seeing what good could come out of that collaboration for the community. So that was an excellent meeting. Very glad to make that happen so shortly after his arrival, and I'm sure he is trying to figure out what's going on. I know I did for the first month I was here, so I have some sympathy for him, but I was very grateful that he sat down with me for about an hour. We had our second field days on July 28th, incredibly successful, lots of kids and families out there. Jordan, our Parks, Do Everything Parks person, did an amazing job again. She set the standard for that type of work, and we're very proud to have her coming up with creative ideas. So that was terrific. We had Timber Days again last weekend. It was very successful. Friday night, there was quite a few people down there. There was even more on Saturday, and it was incredibly successful. My family and I were up here for a little bit, and I saw how many people were there, and we went up to the canal. So we had a great time, but it was very successful, and it was a lot of fun. It's great to see that everybody out getting together again. We have tomorrow at 1 p.m. we have the grand opening for the Pear Orchard Park and Ride. I will be there, and you are all welcome to come as well. Right at 1 o'clock, we'll cut the ribbon, and we're good to go there. On August 17th, that's the date of our next council meeting, I believe, but before our council meeting starts, we have the Chalk the Walk event, which is going to be a great time. I believe the chamber is sponsoring that and putting that on, and definitely something we want to support. That's always nice to see the kids out there drawing interesting things and trying to figure out what they are. It's a donkey, right? No. Did that with my daughter, so familiar with that. One thing I wanted to really promote is our branding exercise, and that is 3 words or phrases that describe Shelton to you. We've had pretty good response so far, but we can definitely use more. That survey is going to close on August 20th, so you still have a little bit of time, but get in there. Participate in the future. It doesn't take too much of your time. 3 words or phrases. What does Shelton mean to you? And finally, on your looking ahead, for our next council meeting on the 17th, you will have a study session. That will be one of the last ones in that format. That one will start at 5 o'clock on your budget, 2022 budget development. And then we will have a public hearing on an ordinance to update Shelton Municipal Code 8.08. and a memorandum of understanding with Waste Connections, updating the administrative provisions of that service. And we'll also have a couple of surplus police vehicles ready to go down to the state, down to Tumwater to be sold, hopefully, along with our roller. We can get them all done at once. And then you also have the second reading for PUD and rotating art gallery, which we're also going to promote very similar to the way we have over the past year, even though people can come into the building now. So with that, that's all I have to update you on at the moment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? All right. Council have any new items for discussion?
Just a comment. if you don't
Comment?
mind.
Okay, Joe?
Just wanted to pass on, it was last Friday, we had our retreat. Thank you, Jeff and Donna, for supporting that and getting us together. But for the council, I just wanted to pass on that I really enjoyed the conversation, and, it was a really good time. I thought, we talked about a lot of topics, of course, but, the level of conversation was pretty great. So I look forward to kind of keeping that rolling as we move into the study session format and everything else. So just wanted to say thanks.
I'll second that.
All right.
Right. let's-
Anything else? Seeing none, our next meeting will be Tuesday, August 17th, 2021 at, wait a minute, are we putting it in there?
August 17th, 2021.
That's what this says.
Yeah, study session at 5.
5 o'clock.
And then regular business meeting at 6.
Okay, at 5 o'clock. All right. This meeting is adjourned at 7:18.